people who are striving for their belt for the sake of getting the belt, like the black belt. Whereas when you're ready, you'll be ready.
Yeah.
The belt doesn't matter. You've actually got to do the work.
Yep.
The title is kind of irrelevant.
Yep.
You're either skilled, you've got the skills, you've done the work, you've put the effort in, or you haven't. It's a good message. Well done, Ben. It's a great message for those young graduates out there.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners and Burke Britton Financial Partners.
This is the Finances Podcast, and I'm not going to mention the episode number. Am I, Ben?
That's a good change-up. Get yourself into trouble.
I always get myself into trouble. Today's co-host is Ben Kemp, usual co-host. Oh, you swing in and swing out.
Most of the time.
Where have you been the last few?
Been up in Shep this week, so up in the Golden Valley. Seeing a few clients up there. A little bit of a Christmas function with Peter and I.
I heard that went pretty well.
It was good. It was actually really nice.
Yeah.
Good vibes up there.
Good family vibe up there.
Yeah, it's definitely... again, you notice, and as much as Geelong's pretty country as well, but you go up to Shep and you really know you're in the country.
Yeah.
Farmers and retired farmers, and they love bringing their kids along and all that, so it's good.
When are you going to change your name to Burke? Because I was just thinking that if you change your name to Burke, because you are the fourth Burke son, pretty much, you've been adopted by Peter, but that would work really well with today's guest, Tristan Burke, who I'm going to say you're a distant cousin. I'm pretty sure we're related.
Have to be.
County Galway, is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we did. I think we figured this out.
We did figure it out. So you hosted us for a lunch over at Harwood Andrews, and we're talking. We talked a little bit of business. We talked a little bit of estate planning, but mostly Peter talked about the history. He went way back to the Burkes in County Galway. So we've worked out that Tristan Burke, who is today's guest, is actually family. So welcome.
Thank you,
brother.
Thank you. Very distant uncle or something. Yeah.
Thanks, Tristan. It's a bit of a Harwood Andrews flavour today. So we had one of your colleagues, Vicky DiStefano, on talking all things commercial, property law. We talked the shareholders agreement. I threw a couple of queries at her. She said, no, that's Tristan's wheelhouse. So we might cover off on those today. But you've listened to a couple of our early podcasts. You mentioned before we started recording, you listened to some of our god-awful early podcasts, and you told us they were pretty good. So that felt nice. He has to say that.
Yeah.
But
that were good.
If you've listened to any of the podcasts, you know that we like, if it's someone's first episode, we like to get a bit of backstory before we jump into all the hard-hitting questions around estate planning and law. So, Tristan, tell us a little bit about your background. You can go back to County Galway if you like, but where'd you grow up, mate, and how'd you end up where you are today as a lawyer at Harwood Andrews?
Can I just say, you could do a 2 podcast just on his backstory. I thought it was pretty good backstory.
It's pretty
in the
cool.
notes, so it's
Yeah.
not the traditional pathway.
I've had a bit going on. If I start rambling, just shut me up.
No, you're all good. We can edit. That's what Job said.
Job
says
good.
he puts lines
Shall
through sections of the podcast that's mostly when Ben and I are talking. He says, "No, let's take that out."
Yeah, no, Joe will be like, "All right, this is way too boring." All right, so I was born in Melbourne. I'm 31, so I was born in 1993. I lived there for the first 10 or 11 years of my life. Grew up with my nan. Old man wasn't around from when I was a baby, so I grew up with nan and my mum. And mum was kind of in and out of the picture a bit, but it was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good childhood. I didn't really know any different, so I thought it was all right. And then mum came back to live with us when I was about 10, and she had her own kind of issues going on, so we thought a move to the country would be good for her. So we moved to Clunes, which is, I don't know if you know where Clunes is.
Ben will know it. He's a good country boy. Whereabouts is Clunes, Ben?
Just outside Ballarat somewhere, in that general region.
Okay.
Yeah, 30 minutes out of Ballarat. Between Ballarat and Maryborough. There's nothing there. Eventually they started this like yearly book show, which is just this, it's the only thing the town's got going on, really.
Footy club.
That and a footy club. Yeah. Well, Nick Hine, who plays for Essendon, he used to play footy there, so it's got a good kind of footy culture. So we moved there when I was 11, and I started high school I went to Maryborough, which was an okay high school. And I was there for a couple of years, and then my best mate at the time moved to Ballarat. a school in Ballarat, and I had to follow him. So I convinced my nan to move us from Clunes to Ballarat, and I started high school there, and then he got expelled for being naughty, and me shortly after.
Yeah, so you got expelled as well.
I did.
What did you do?
I don't really know.
Come on, you know what you did. You don't get expelled for nothing.
No, it's just disruptive and just not paying attention, and I just didn't want to be in school, especially after he left.
Yeah.
He was a really close mate, and I was just really bored when he left, and I feel like smaller towns they're great, but they can be a little bit cliquey, so it can be hard to kind of get in with an established group sometimes. So I didn't really make a lot of friends at that school, especially after he left. So I was just trying to make friends and kind of be the class clown and show off a bit and show off to the girls and whatever. And as you do, and the teachers didn't like that. They weren't impressed by my jokes, and so they said, you can't be at school. You can do some some distance learning for a bit, but you've got to leave. And we were pretty poor, money wise. So my nan said, look, I think it'd be better if you just get a job and start working and help pay some bills.
How old were you?
14.
Okay,
so pretty young. So I started an apprenticeship. Yeah, I was pretty devastated to leave school actually. When I got the message from the school that I wasn't able to return, I was pretty upset. I was like, I've really done it this time. Like, I'd always got away with warnings and people kind of forgiving me because I was, I don't know, a good talker, I guess. Sometimes I could talk my way out of trouble when I was a kid pretty well. But this time I just couldn't talk my way out of it. So I was pretty upset when I realised that I was actually going to have to leave school. And I wanted to be in the Air Force when I was a kid. So I was like, I need year 12 for that. And that was kind of a pretty sudden reality that wouldn't be happening.
So why the Air Force?
I don't know. I think I just had an idea that I'd really like the structure of either the Army or the Air Force. And I just thought the Air Force would be a better career.
Top Gun.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm too tall to be in a plane.
Vicky said it's a Tom Cruise theme. Vicky said that she watched the Few Good Men. That's why she wanted to be a lawyer.
Really? There you go. I wanted to, Top Gun. I thought, but too tall and probably not smart enough to be in the Air Force. So probably for the best. But yeah, I don't know. I thought maybe the structure and maybe some strong figures would do me good, maybe.
Bit of discipline,
because I definitely didn't have that as a kid. My poor nan, I gave her a hard time. She tried her best, but she had trouble controlling a kind of 12-year-old who was already 6'3", so that was a bit difficult for poor old Nancy. Anyway, so I realised I had to leave school, and I was like, okay, well, I want to do something where I can earn some money, so I really want to be an electrician. And there was a guy in Clunes who had I still lived in Clunes, but I went to school in Ballarat, I should have said, at this time. And there was a guy there who his son went to the footy club, and he had he was a spark, he had his own business. And I asked him if I could have a job, and he said, I'd love to, but I've just decided to retire at the end of the year. So that didn't quite work out. And then I saw an ad in the paper that said apprentice bricklayer wanted, and it was like $250 a week.
How old were you? 14?
14.
So what year is that? Year 9?
Year 8.
Year 8, yeah.
Yeah. And so I didn't finish year 8, which is pretty embarrassing in a lot of ways. Well, I think I did actually, but I don't know if I actually did the work to pass something. They just passed me out of sympathy. Mm-hmm. And so I hit this guy up for a job, and then that was it. And then he was based in Ballarat. I was still living in Clunes at the time. So, and we worked in Tarneet, Tarneet was just paddocks then, and now it's just hundreds of thousands of houses. Yeah. But I remember when we were driving, and it was just, you'd get there at 6:30 in the morning, and it would be pitch black, and all you'd see is the lights on these excavators just spinning around. It was crazy. It was just like hundreds of excavators, and it was just paddocks, and it was just the most surreal thing. And now you drive there, and it's everywhere that was just these paddocks. It's just full of houses, so dense.
You started it.
You
started it all.
Yeah, we were there early. Yeah, really early. This was back in 2008. Really early. So, but I was living in Queensland, so we were living at 4:30 in the morning, and Nan was driving me every morning into Ballarat at 4:30 in the morning, driving home, coming back and pick me up.
Your nan's a saint.
She's a saint. She's really good.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate her when I was a kid, but now I think about it as an adult. She's an incredible person, really incredible. And
Is your nan still around?
She is.
Yep.
Yeah. She lives in Ballarat still, and my mum lives there now too. Not together, but yeah, I gave her a really hard time when I was a kid, and I think that's probably my only regret. I don't regret anything else I did, but giving her a hard time, probably I regret it a lot because she did a lot for me. So she drove me. We left at 4:30 in the morning. She'd pack my lunch and we'd be off, and I'd sleep in the car, and then we'd get to Melbourne at 7:15, and then I'd come home. I'd get home at 7 at night, and I did that for 3 years.
You must find it hard when people complain about things.
I don't know. Everything's hard in its own way, but
Yeah, without perspective of what else is going on
you need
around
perspective.
people.
Yeah. I'll might talk about that in a second, but I'll talk about it now. Actually, everything's hard, and this job's hard. Like law's hard, really is hard, but it's not hard like that. It's not hard like getting up at 4:30 every morning and working in the environment. Getting sunburnt every day, working your guts out, your hands are bleeding, you're making kind of crappy money.
And you're 15, 14 years old.
15, 14.
And you've got Scottish skin, so you're going to get...
You burn under light.
Yes.
Not the sun, just light. So...
and you're 6'4", and
trying to lay bricks on the ground.
Yeah. And everyone's yelling at you because it's just how it is in construction. And yeah, it's not it's a different kind of hard, but it gives you an appreciation for the work I do now, where I'm in an air-conditioned office and I've got tea and coffee whenever I want it. And if I need a sick day, people don't call me what Peter calls you, or worse.
I think Peter's called you on the podcast, so you probably
a bit of a pussy.
That's okay. So it's good. So it's given me some perspective. So when I'm kind of working big days and I think this job's hard, I've got that to fall back on, and I go, it's really not that hard. Like it's hard in different ways. It's mentally hard, but it's not. And people are relying on you to give them advice because you're dealing with people's lives, but it's not physically hard. It's not physically hard, and you're not exhausted physically, which is really tough to come into work every day when you can't lift your arms up. So I did that, and I did that for a while, and then I finished my apprenticeship. I moved bosses at some point and did commercial, which was much better money. I went from $250 a week to about $400 a week. And we were doing commercial stuff, so we were doing prisons and schools. They were renovating all these schools at the time, back in the early 2009, 2010, and there was just a heap of work, which was good. So travelled all around the country, and we were travelling up to Echuca and Shepparton, and my boss was too tight to put us up in accommodation, so we're leaving at 3 a.m. and crazy stuff. And we'd all sleep in the car, except the driver, who'd hope wasn't sleeping, but there was some moments. And then I finished that, and I didn't really want to work for someone anymore, so I went out on my own and had a business for a little while, for 2.5 years. And
just you, or you had some staff?
I had staff, yeah. I had five boys under me.
Yep.
Started off with just one, my housemate, and we had an agreement where I'd pay him when I could, and he could live with me for free rent. So that was the agreement.
Like the deal I've got with Ben.
Yeah.
Sleeping out the back of my swag.
Ben's still waiting for a paycheck. It'll come, Ben. And then so I was just like, all right, you can live with me, but I can only pay you when I get paid, which is kind of every month or two, which payment terms back then were pretty rough. It was sometimes 60, 90 days. It was pretty tough. But I made it work, and then the problem I made, or the problem I had, was I was working for a few different builders, and then I ended up just working for one guy. And he had 20 townhouses that he was building, and that was the dream back then, because every week you were just stressed about getting more work coming in. And I had this massive set of townhouses for Melbourne Uni, and I was like, all right, well, let's finish all our other jobs. Everyone will work here, and we'll just get it done. And they were pretty small houses, but they were worth, I don't know, let's say they were worth about $8,000 or $9,000 each to finish, and we put all our efforts into those, and I realised pretty quickly that I hadn't been paid for about 70 grand of work. And I only realised because I started kind of running out of money, and I'd put all these invoices in, and I was like, hey, what's going on here? Like, where am I going to get paid? And I think I was only 20 at the time, and a bit naive. And he kept saying, oh, it's the administrative people in the office. They haven't put your invoices through. Sorry, mate, I'll sort it out. And then my friend came to the job a couple of days after, and he said, you better pack up your tools. This guy's gone under. And he goes, just don't even bother finishing off the work you're doing. You're just wasting your time. And I didn't really believe him. I didn't really know what that meant either. I didn't really understand what that actually meant. And I was like, oh, I don't really care what you're saying. I'm just going to keep working, and I worked there for another week or so. And then I got a letter from his trustee in bankruptcy saying, file your creditors report, and we'll consider a dividend. And
you still didn't know what that meant.
I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
So that's true. I had no idea what that meant. I was like, what do you mean a dividend? I don't have any shares. And that was it. So yeah, 70 grand down the hole, and I had to pay everybody, and that was the end of that. So and we ended up getting nothing as a dividend. He had like so much debt. This guy, he was so rogue, and but he must have hid this money because, one of my mates who was also a bricklayer working for Simmons, he saw him at Melbourne Cup one year or something, and he came in a limo, and he had all these girls with him, and he obviously still had money, just not in the business. So I was like, oh, well, that's not great. So I went and saw a lawyer, and he said, there's nothing you can do. Now you've got to pay me. And I was like, okay. But there was something I could do. There was some things that I could do. You can't trade insolvent. There's certain obligations you've got as a director that I now know. And you can't just do that. And the guy can't really tell me about any of those. So when I found out, I go, actually, you know what, this is pretty crap. All these tradies are getting screwed, and I really want to do something about it. So that gave me some motivation to study law. That's kind of my initial motivation. My girlfriend at the time was also studying law, so she kind of not inspired me, but listening to her talk about her studies, I kind of had a little bit of an idea of what I'd be learning and things like that. And I always liked arguing, and it's a bit cliche, but I guess I did. And I also wanted a job where I could just kind of throw myself at it and never feel like I'd mastered it. I wanted to just feel like I could just have this career where I could work every day, and it was just going to be kind of not an end-sum game where I could eventually be 100%. I'd always be learning. I'd always be growing. There'd always be a challenge. I thought that would be a cool idea. So that led me into law, and because I think I finished year 8. Let's say I finished year 8. Otherwise, people won't come and get me to do their work. Let's say I finished year 8. But because I hadn't finished year 9, it wasn't an easy path into uni. I had to kind of give them an explanation of what I'd done up to that point, to kind of give them a bit of a character statement. And then they let me into, they were happy with that. And then they let me into criminology. And once you're an adult, once you're over 21, kind of ATAR doesn't really matter too much anymore. If you want to kind of get into a course other than, let's say medicine or something, you kind of just get into a course where the requirements aren't so high, and then you get good marks, and then you can kind of internally transition. That's
a good message for, I hope, my daughter.
Yes.
My daughter
Yes.
and all the kids yesterday or the day before that were getting their ATARs and have absolutely peaking out.
Yeah.
Just relax.
Relax.
It's not the end of the world.
Just takes a bit more time.
Yeah.
But you just get more life experience in that time.
Still so young at 21.
21, you're a baby.
Yeah.
Real baby. Yeah, you're so young. You don't think you're young when you're 21, but you really are when you look back.
So you did your nuts on the business. You had no money. What were you doing to fund your way through uni?
Bricklaying.
Oh, so you kept bricklaying?
For someone, though.
Okay.
Yeah, not for myself.
Yep.
I was like, oh.
Were you full-time and studying full-time?
Yep.
So the bricklaying law student, there wouldn't be too many of them, I don't reckon.
Probably not heaps.
No.
I didn't meet
think
any.
it'd be pretty
No.
niche.
Yeah.
My younger brother's a bricklayer, but he's as dumb as a post. So.
Yeah.
Flipped into law.
Well, you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to be a lawyer. You just have to be a good lawyer. Like, I've got two skills. I say I can lay bricks and I can be a lawyer. That's really it. Like, I'm not some genius, but you can learn how to.
That's
do
a pretty
anything.
good combo, though. You're pretty handy, and you can talk your way out of most things.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you, like anything, you just learn. Like, you have good mentors, you have good people above you. People take time and they teach you things, and then you learn it. Like,
if you want to learn.
I
think that's the biggest thing. If people want to learn something, have a go at it, they will.
Yeah.
Like, you can try anything and get to some degree okay at it.
For sure.
Plenty of people just won't.
Plenty of people won't. And plenty of people will go, oh, God, it's going to be 7 years before I can be a lawyer. It's just too much effort. But the next 7 years are going to pass anyway.
Yeah.
And you're either going to be 7 years, you're going to be in the same position you are, or 7 years, you're going to be a place where you want to be. And that's the only lesson well, not the only lesson, but it's probably the main lesson I've learned so far in my life is just you need to be patient. Things happen, but you have to take steps towards them.
I don't think we've talked about this plenty of times, but that idea of deferred reward, it is... I think it's the minority of people that actually have that ingrained in them, where they know that I will the success will come later, but the pain begins today. Whereas at the moment, it feels like the inverse, where you want all the gratification and all the reward up front, and not really prepared to deal with the pain later.
Yeah,
it's weird, but.
Yeah, well, I guess you'd say it all the time in the work you do with people investing, and it's all kind of long-term calculated decisions, a lot of it. And
well, a lot of it in money terms, like the example I've used a few times is lay-by versus buy now, pay later. Afterpay is that, when I grew up, Christmas time, Mum would put things on lay-by, and again, it's a small example, but you did a little bit of pain along the way and you got the reward at the end.
Yep.
At the moment, people get that reward, that gratification, the dopamine hit now, and then they don't want to have the pain afterwards of paying something off. And I think the same applies with in the workplace as well. People want all of the reward up front, not necessarily prepared to put in the work and the effort to actually achieve it. But we're sounding old now, Ben. You're sounding old.
When I say it, I feel...
I am old. You're not old, and
we're the same age. So
we're
the young ones. Both born in
'93.
We're the young fellas trying to drag you back.
Yeah,
I think that's right. Like we got to, in places like in law firms where there's lots of different levels of seniority. There's a big push for kind of more junior people to rapidly progress. And look, I understand if you want to progress for the sake of a pay rise, but just a title really doesn't really matter. Like, in my opinion, it's nice to be recognised, but I don't think you can rush it. And really, when you get a promotion, all it means is you've got way more expectations on you. I don't know why you'd want to do that to yourself if you weren't quite there yet. And people above you know when you're ready, and I think it comes, but you just have to be patient. And it's not. It's a marathon, really. Like it's a career. Like, you're going to be doing this for 40 years or 35 years or whatever. Like it's going to happen. Just chill out.
Yeah. You just got to do your reps, I'd say.
Yeah,
like I've said that to you with the young, like, coming in, just doing similar but sort of basic stuff just over and over and over again. You're just building up your skill set to then expand that to more complex situations. And if you don't do that, you're going to get found out.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you do, really. That's the same thing.
Yeah, completely agree.
I always think of the analogy, I know we follow Jocko a bit, but he talks about it from a martial arts point of view, that people who are striving for their belt for the sake of getting the belt, like the black belt, whereas when you're ready, you'll be ready.
Yeah.
The belt doesn't matter. You've actually got to do the work.
Yep.
The title is kind of irrelevant.
Yep.
You're either skilled, you've got the skills, you've done the work, you've put the effort in, or you haven't. It's a good message. Well done, Ben. It's a great message for those young graduates out there.
That's right. That's right.
So you studied, you worked. When did you actually finish study, and what was your first gig out of uni?
Yeah. So I was still So second last year of uni. I think it was the second last year of uni. I got a job as a paralegal at a firm in Melbourne.
What's a paralegal for those that don't know?
Paralegal is like a kind of a helper to a lawyer, but it's usually someone who's studying law.
So you get the coffee, you
get the coffee,
organise the croissants.
Yeah. You do all the research that the lawyer doesn't want to do. You do all the court documents that the lawyer doesn't want to do. Like, it's usually given to kind of law students.
Yep.
whereas a person who's not studying law would kind of generally be like a law clerk or someone, where they're doing work, but they're not considering a career in law, so to speak. So paralegal is kind of your entry point. They are really hard. They can be really hard to get, especially when the market's not great. So I was really lucky to get one. And the firm I was in was a really, really big firm. Met a lot of smart people, made a lot of good connections, and did a lot of good work, primarily in the not-for-profit space, which was quite fun and rewarding. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I the way I got my kind of graduate job, you do a clerkship, which is like kind of work experience when you might have something similar in financial advice or accounting, things like that, but you do kind of like a couple of week rotations where you meet everybody and they see if you're a good fit for the firm, and they're hard to get to. And let's say 40 people do a clerkship and then they offer 2 jobs, something like that. So it can be tough. So you do as many as you can so you kind of
increase your chances of landing one. Yeah.
That's right. So I did mine at another firm in Geelong, Coulter Legal, which they're a great bunch of people. And I was lucky enough to be offered a grad job, and there was 3 others in my year, which was great. They were good people too. And then I started working there, and your graduate year goes for 12 months. And you do kind of some rotations in different teams, and commercial, family, wills and estates, and litigation. And at the end of it, you kind of say where you want to end up, and if there's space in that team, they'll offer you a job. And that's what happened. So I started there as a lawyer, or a graduate lawyer, and I was there for a couple of years, and then kind of recently moved over to Harwood Andrews.
I don't think we mentioned at the outset what area of law you're in. So So you did your clerkship, you got a gig, you did the rotation, and why was it? You can tell us what area of law you're in and why it appealed to you.
Yeah, I'm in wills and estates, and I had no interest in working in that area at the start.
Okay.
Zero. I wanted to be in construction law because that's my whole inspiration to getting into law.
So you just lied and you told them so you get a gig. You thought there's a
No. I told him I wanted to be a construction lawyer when I came.
Okay.
And there was a guy there who wanted to set up a practice there in construction law, but you have to do the 4 rotations. Like you have to dabble in all the teams to kind of as part of the process. And he was sitting in the commercial team at the time. And he was trying to kind of get this like little niche subset of the commercial team in construction, and the only reason I think that didn't go through is because he ended up getting an in-house role at a big freight company, and he left, and there was no one else in there who wanted to kind of set up a construction practice. And I would have done commercial law, but there was a person who worked at the firm who'd been there for a long time, and that was her first preference, and I didn't. I was trying to be a bit strategic. I didn't want to put in my preference for commercial because I didn't want them to say there's not enough room and we're not going to give you a job at all. So my next favourite was wills and estates, and I think a lot of that to do was with the team. The team was great bunch of people, and also the work was really interesting and generally not too time sensitive. Like you could spend a little bit more time on the work and get it really right, whereas a lot of these other areas they're kind of tight time frames, lots of pressure, especially litigation. Like it never ends. You've got court dates every day, and it's really stressful, and I just didn't want to quite put myself through that. So I thought wills and estates would be a good area, and there's a lot to know, a lot to learn, and I like the work. And you also get to do a mixture of litigation, like there's estate disputes, all kinds of estate disputes. The administration, when people have passed away, you get to kind of do that back end work, so to speak, and then the front end work, drafting documents and doing structuring and things like that. So it's actually a great mix of work. People don't think it's that sexy, but I think it's an awesome area. I didn't at the time though, until I actually worked in it, and it's a hard sell to young kids dealing with succession. Like it's not kind of the number one pick, but it should be. It's great, and it's actually like one of the areas where you kind of really cut your teeth early in your career, whereas a lot of other areas you don't really get to do a lot of substantial work until you're kind of a bit more senior. You're meeting with clients kind of day one as a wills and estates lawyer, so it's actually a great great gig.
It's funny. I think most of the people we've had on the podcast who've ended up in wills and estates probably have said a similar thing. Like, not many of them, that was their passion. I don't know. It's probably not the sexy side of it at uni or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But then they've fallen into it and they've loved it. And
Yeah.
maybe it's that client contact part.
I was going to say
I hadn't thought about it until you're sort of saying it then, is probably similar to us, is just interacting with people and seeing when you get an outcome for them and help them. Like, you get so much reward out of that.
Yeah.
But it's not what people think, though. They think you're dealing with dead people.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they think that it's just a super transactional area. Like, it's like insurance, wills. It appears, super. It appears very transactional. I have a need, I fix that need. When the reality is that it incorporates everything that sits around that person.
Yeah.
And the
Their
best
emotions too.
Yeah.
That's probably the big thing.
Yeah, and the best people in those areas are those people that have good relationships. I know Vicky was just talking about this on the previous podcast, that even in sort of the commercial and property law, the best client she has is the ones that she has long-term relationships with, so that she actually understands the depth and breadth of everything that makes up their situation, rather than just completing a contract.
Yeah, yeah. You really need that kind of context around what you're doing for someone, because if you just meet someone for the first time and you kind of everything's really surface level, there's so much of their family dynamic that you miss out on, and it's so important to factor that into estate planning, particularly blended families, people who have had falling outs, people who have got kids with their own kind of demons. Like, you can't cover that in 5 minutes. You just can't. Like, you really need to get to know people, and this area can be done really well. Like, you can really help people in this and preserve relationships after someone dies, a key player dies. You really can. But it can also go really wrong if you don't plan for it well. And we just want to, I just encourage people to kind of give this, there's an attitude kind of where, I won't be around. I'm going to be gone. But you've loved your family your whole life. You've cared for your family your whole life. You should try and preserve that relationship with everybody after you've gone. I don't think it's a good attitude.
What's the biggest annoyance you have when, I know you're thinking of it, I hope you're thinking of it.
I hope I am too.
Yeah. When someone says, why do I care? I won't be around.
Well, they're normally sitting beside their partner, and normally sometimes they've got their kids there. Or they've got to go, they're off to pick their kids up from school, or, they're not thinking about anyone other than themselves. Yeah. And they just leave and they don't care.
Yeah.
And I don't think they realise that.
Yeah, I think that self-awareness, when it's lacking, like those, again, the best clients are those that actually think beyond themselves and think of the second and third order consequences of what happens. And I think you mentioned it a couple of times, but I think a lot of that from an advisory point of view, or from your point of view as a lawyer, comes from like personal experience. I mean, I know personally that it's all of the things that have happened in my life that kind of inform what the advice that I actually provide my clients. And I'm assuming that a similar way for you. You actually see that and you think, well, I've seen this, I've either experienced it personally, and I don't want that to be the case for the person that's in front of me. Yeah,
yeah. I completely agree. Yeah, I've got a pretty. I'm the wrong side of the Burkes. I've got a pretty dodgy side. We drew the short straw. Pretty dysfunctional generally, and I see kind of the breakdown in relationships in families, and I think, God, can we avoid this? Like, you got this great set of people in front of you, lovely couple, great family, good kids. I'd hate to think that they don't kind of give this the effort it needs, and someone passes away, and then it all goes up in flames. It's such a shame, and it doesn't have to. It really doesn't have to. It just needs a little bit of planning, a little bit of effort, and it's not nice to think about your own death, but it's going to happen to all of us. It really will.
I think the other thing is not overcomplicating it. People assume that when they get that legal overlay that it's going to get super complex. Yeah. But really, it's just about getting the outcome they need in the most simple manner.
Exactly.
You're not making it more complicated for the sake of it. Sometimes we have people who have really sort of specific wishes. And again, it's a bit like when they come in and say, oh, I want to buy an investment property, and you unpack it and you work out what they actually want is to maybe build wealth. They come in and they say, I want my kids to have our house. They've got to have our house. And you say, well, or one of the kids. And you say, why do you want that? And they say, I'm worried about them being able to, have a home to live in the future, which might not need them to have that specific property, but they just need to be catered for in some other manner. But they've just, they're fixated on this as an outcome. You can unpack that to work out what do you actually need, like, or what are you trying to achieve, and then lay that out in a simple manner that means everyone still can sit around the Christmas table and look at each other, because often they can't.
Do you think one of the issues is the fact that your industry has been considered like very transactional, that people will only really present to you when they've got an issue, rather than think, actually, I should have Tristan in my corner all the time. He should be someone that I have a relationship with on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, it is, and it's an issue we kind of generally have in law, kind of in almost all areas. I don't really know what the answer is for that, to be honest.
I've got a few thoughts, but I actually spoke. You mentioned Stefan, I think, but in the conversation I had with Stefan, we had this conversation where he mentioned that he was kind of envious of the relationship that financial advisors have with their clients, and that we have sort of, and even in how we're remunerated, we, in many instances we have an ongoing retainer arrangement where we look after the entirety of people's situations, so that we're educating them along the way for the trigger events, and they can literally pick up the phone and know. We've already educated them about what the triggers are, and they know that we already know their circumstances inside out and back to front, and that there's value in that relationship. And I actually think that the same could apply from a legal perspective. I think there's some avenue. There is a business model. There's a relationship model that would allow clients to get value out of actually having an ongoing connection rather than just a transactional one. Do a will, and then we'll see you again in 7 years when hopefully you need to update your will. You want to see them and hear all of the things that are happening in their life all the way through, so that you can adjust, tweak, modify, and iterate on their situation. That's my thoughts anyway.
I completely agree. I'd love people to call me every 12 months and just drop me a line, 10 minutes. Hey, this is just a little recap of what's happened in the last 12 months. Does this change anything? Yes, no. Come in and see me. Have another good 12 months. Call me if you need me. That'd be amazing. I'd love people to do that. I really would. I think that's a great idea. There's so much that happens in 5 to 10 years when people do see us that just can totally throw things out of whack. And all it takes is an unexpected death or incapacity, and kind of what's happened in the interim has totally thrown out of whack what we put in place.
So just on that, maybe let's talk about what are some of those things that should be triggers for people to think either, number one, I should have wills and powers of attorney. And again, if anyone wants to listen to some of the basics of what wills are, what powers of attorney are, go back and listen to, I think we did a podcast with Daniela. I think Bridget was on the podcast as well at some point. Although it's family law. But anyway, for the purpose of this, what are some of the trigger events that people should be really aware of? What are the things that change their circumstances and mean they should ring Tristan and say, hey, my world's changed a little bit? Yeah.
Well, for your will, probably everyone should at least be starting with a will. That should be the base. So if you don't have a will, the trigger point is getting one. If you've got one in place, and let's say you've made it when your kids are pretty young, and as they're growing up, you kind of get a bit of a feel for their personalities, and you go, okay, well, maybe they're going to need a bit of help here. It might be they've got some kind of, maybe an intellectual or physical disability or something like that they're going to need a little bit more support in their life. So there's some planning we can do around that has all kinds of benefits, which we would talk to people about in a bit more detail. But that would be one thing. Or if they grow up and they seem like they're going to, maybe their personalities are maybe a little bit difficult. Maybe they might enjoy spending a bit too much money, or maybe they might enjoy, having a bit too much of a drink or something like that. There's protections we can put in place for them. So if you've got, let's just say you're starting out with a standard kind of mum and dad or partner will where it's to them and then the kids. But then as things go on, you think we need a bit more protection, we need a bit more structure around that. That would be a trigger point that I think would be definitely worth a chat. If a key person's died, if you've had a child tragically pass away, or if you've had a partner pass away, or one of your executors who you've appointed in your will, let's say it's your brother or your sister or whatever, one of them have died, someone who plays a key piece in your estate planning, a guardian you've appointed in your will, someone like that's died, you really need to update your will, because that can cause all kinds of problems. the way you hold assets has kind of changed substantially. Let's say everything was in your personal name, but now you've got family trusts and you've got companies and you've kind of restructured your assets, or you've had a house jointly held with your partner, but you're in business, so you've put it all in their name, and well, that person now needs to give you the right to reside in that property in their will. Otherwise, it's all going to go to you, and then you're going to be totally exposed again. But there's ways we can kind of protect that from happening. So restructuring assets, kind of, if you've come into a bit of money, if you've come into an inheritance, things like that are definitely worth a chat. And maybe it doesn't mean you've got to update your will, but it's at least worth a phone call, and we can tell you whether or not it's recommended. They're kind of the maybe some things people haven't considered before. There's kind of some other ones which are a bit more obvious, but actually, if you marry, if you've got a will in place and then you marry, the will's cancelled, void. Come and update it, because it doesn't apply anymore unless you've got something in the will to say that it keeps applying after you've married. If you've divorced, come and see us, please. Even if you've separated and not divorced, come and see us. If you're really going to go through with it. That's a big one, actually. That's a really big one.
Because when they separate, doesn't void it.
Not at
when
all.
they divorce, it doesn't, or does?
It voids it to the extent that it provided something to the partner,
Yep.
or the former partner now. So if you've given everything to them and then to the kids, and you actually divorce and it all goes through the court and it's all approved, it's like they've kind of died before you, essentially, the way the will's read, and it goes straight down. But you're just relying on some clause in the legislation. Like, I haven't actually seen it play out like that. For the sake of updating your will, for some peace of mind, come and see us.
Family lawyers seem pretty good at that, from what I see. They go through that process and they make sure they get that updated at the end. But there's people out there who just haven't gone through that legal process. Like, they've been separated for
heaps.
a decade and never formally done a financial separation or divorce.
I'll just tell you a really quick story. I'm going off track a bit, but I think it's interesting. So I had a guy come and see me mid-year, and he'd separated from his partner, and then they hadn't divorced. And they've been separated for ages. They've been separated for quite a few years, 3 or 4 years. And he goes, I really need to do my will, blah, blah, blah. He comes in, he's got 2 kids, still married, but they're separated. She lives in interstate. And we update his will. Him and his mum, they live together on this big farm, and they own the property as tenants in common, so they've each got their own share in the property. So his will kind of gives her the right to right to live at the property for life, and then on her death, everything goes to his 2 kids, right? That's great. And even though they're not separated, that's the will. She has to then make a claim against the estate for a piece of the pie, and she'd get a lot less making a claim than she would if he didn't update his will, and it would all just go to her. Even if he didn't have a will and he died without a will, the default is it all goes to her. So at least making a will kind of puts the ball in her court to
challenge,
which isn't easy to do.
No.
And then he died. He died a couple of months later. So I was like, thank God he actually went through with this. But I think that's a really, like, just the fact that he actually went through with it and kind of took some time and did it properly. That's the circumstance we're in now. Otherwise, the kids would have totally missed out.
People don't think that will happen to them,
well,
but it always does.
Well, they're not thinking second, third order consequence of a decision.
Yeah, they're not.
Which is why they actually need a professional support to actually point it out and unemotionally say, here's what you need to do. Here's the implications. Yeah. And we'll do it for you.
And the way we did the will, now the mum doesn't have to just be evicted. She gets to keep living there. Whereas if he just kind of gave it all to the kids without considering the mum, it would have caused all kinds of problems. So just speaking with someone who works in this space is really beneficial. So that's the will. Super, you don't need a lawyer for this. We do it as part of the process, but making sure you've got a binding death benefit nomination for your super, that is absolutely key. There's forms on your super funds websites. Most of them lapse every 3 years once you make it. Some of them, a small amount, are non-lapsing now. You set and forget. If you nominate your partner and then you separate and you've got a non-lapsing one, even if you've got a lapsing one, update it, because that can't be challenged. I don't think there's any it can't be challenged. That's the position there's very small amounts of wiggle room with that, but really not a lot. So for the sake of printing off a form from your super fund's website and getting 2 of your mates to witness it and just nominating it to either your spouse, your kids, or your estate is going to save everyone possibly over 12 months of a headache. Please do that. And it doesn't cost you $1. And then powers of attorney. Powers of attorney, everybody should have them. There is default legislation in place if you don't have a nomination in place with your super fund. There is default legislation if you don't have a will, even though they're just broad brush. They don't consider anyone's circumstances. There's at least a backstop. With powers of attorney for financial and personal decisions, the backstop is you've got to go to VCAT and convince a member to make orders. And if there's even a glimmer of an argument between anyone who wants to apply, they'll make the Office of the Public Advocate get a report, which can take 6 months. They'll come and investigate everybody. They'll see why the orders are needed, what should be included in the orders, who should be appointed, and if they think anyone's disagreeing, they'll appoint, state trustees, and then they'll take fees from you. So just make a power of attorney. It doesn't have to commence immediately. It can commence only if a doctor says you've lost your marbles. But so if that gives you some peace of mind that no one's going to kind of take your life over straight away, that's fine. But that's a really key one. That's really key because the backstop for that is not good.
Well, you see a lot of people with wills. We see a lot of people that don't have wills, but a very small minority have powers of attorney, I think, in comparison.
Yeah.
Probably get another half of them don't have that as well.
Yeah, I don't understand it, particularly when they present to a lawyer and they've gone to a lawyer if they haven't done a will kit themselves and they don't have powers of attorney. I never really understood that, whether it's just...
That's the one that always baffles me because they've done a will and they've done it under advice.
But not got powers of attorney.
Haven't done the powers of attorney while they're there.
And then the person who's done the will hasn't mentioned anything to them about make sure that your beneficiary nominations on your super as you'd want them to be.
Gets missed all the time.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, the call to action to anyone out there is, wills, powers of attorney, beneficiary nominations. If you're unsure about what you should be doing, speak to someone. This is it's critical because the shit show that it causes after the fact is a nightmare. And you've seen plenty, Ben. You've seen plenty, Tristan. It's worth the time, the effort, the energy to get it done. We had a couple other things that we wanted to talk about. I know I think we're going to have a round 2 and a round 3 and a round 4, Tristan. But you and I started talking when we had lunch. We started talking about AI and talking about technology and how that has sort of changed the landscape of both your industry and ours. Maybe let's talk a little bit about AI in law and how you're seeing it be used to support what you do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's being used at the moment to kind of do all the doc reviews. So especially for litigation files where you've got millions and millions of pages of documents that you've got to review, kind of these AI models can go through and just skim for keywords that you can put in, which used to be just some grad who'd sit there until 2 o'clock in the morning with a cup of coffee and can of sugar-free V. So now these computers can do it in just rapid speed. And then what'll happen then is it'll flag kind of keywords and then a human will go in and kind of refine it and see if it's actually relevant, because it could be a keyword but it doesn't have always the context in which you need. But so that's really where I see its application really well, and also helping to summarize meetings with clients about the advice you've given them in person, because it can be hard to have a conversation with someone and you're really trying to listen to them but you're scribbling down notes. So, and I know you guys use this.
We're using it right now,
which is great. I'd love to see it. But I think that's really gonna help. And from a risk management point of view, from kind of the firm and for the client, I think it's good to have something that's keeping a track of what everyone's talking about, so everyone's on the same page. That's a great application. There's a kind of research database we use called Lexis Advance, which is, some people use Westlaw, some people use Lexis Advance. I like Lexis Advance. They're bringing in like an AI case law research subscription thing soon, where you can kind of type in what you're trying to find, and it'll summarize all the cases you need, which is going to be so helpful. Because there's hundreds of thousands of cases, and you think one's relevant, and you read through and it's not. So having an AI to summarize what is actually helpful is going to be great. So that'll be really good. The court has recently, I don't have the exact details on me, but the Supreme Court has just kind of issued like a practice note about using AI and in litigation cases especially, and it's basically said, not don't, but it's like you can't just trust an AI model because look, it's great, but we're dealing with humans here, and you can't just rely on an AI model to have captured everything. You need someone to go through and cross-check it, which I do agree with to some extent, especially while it's still kind of early days. They will get better. In America, there was this lawyer who was citing all these cases in this case, and he's kind of got all this precedent that he's rolling off, and the judge goes to look it up, and none of them existed, and they go, "Where'd you get all this from?" And he's like, "Oh, ChatGPT," and none of them existed. They're all made up.
Hallucinations.
They're all hallucinations, and they were very helpful cases. So, and I've had that as well. I've put in there, give me a case for an article I want to write, and it kind of gives you this summary, and I go, "Oh, this is a great case. I didn't know about this." And then you look it up, it doesn't exist.
Can you remember David Basoli? He said that he's been using chat. David Basoli is sort of the godfather of self-managed super funds in Australia, and we've had him on the podcast. He's a great guy. He looks after Self-Managed Super Fund Alliance, who look after a lot of our clients, their administration. He's into the AI as well, very contemporary in his own way, and he was looking up some case studies, and exactly that. He said these are all they look fantastic, but they're bullshit. Like they didn't exist. So you've got to be really, really cautious about it. And I think one of the other things when I talk about this, when we talk about it on the podcast and we say this is going to help us, it's fantastic. It'll help us with file notes and administration, and the clients are going, how's it helped me? Like, what is the benefit of me as the end consumer? I think my answer to that is that the things that take us away from being client-facing, the things that stop us from having the relationships and doing the best job we possibly can, is all of the administration, the compliance, the governance that sits behind it. And from my perspective, I think AI will actually allow lawyers and advisors, the good ones, to actually do what they're really good at, which is actually problem solve, have relationship with the people, and get the best possible outcome they have. So I think, in my mind, there's some challenges, there's some risks that we need to mitigate, but it should be very much a positive thing. If you're sitting down with your lawyer or a financial advisor and they're saying, listen, we're going to use some AI, some tech, as long as they've got all the right stopgaps in place to protect, I think it's something that will add value rather than detract from relationships.
Yeah,
it's definitely complementary. It's not a replacement. Like, I think people think
tool.
it's going to come in and overtake or wipe things out. It just helps you be more efficient.
Yep. I totally agree. And I think it'll save people money because it'll be less time we've got to spend doing, crappy tasks, and it'll help us service people better. And I think we'll miss we're all good, but I think we'll just generally miss less. Like, it will just be more accurate, more narrow with our advice. So yeah, I see it as a good thing. I don't think it's going to put us out of a job at the moment. Maybe eventually when singularity happens and it just starts recoding itself, who knows, but it becomes like a god. At the moment, I think it's just there to help us.
When did Ray Kurzweil say that the singularity was going to happen? Or is it the 2030 or something like that?
2030.
Close.
Getting close.
Yeah, 2030. But I heard you talking, I don't know, I can't remember the name of the guy, but the market update you just had recently. You were
Adam Dawes? No.
You're talking about the heart, the imaging.
Yeah, it was Dawsey.
Dawsey, yeah. So I think what he said spot on. It's just going to be there to help.
It's just picking up, that just doing all the scans of the hearts and then just going back and checking them when, a half asleep surgeon at the end of the night would flick through them quickly. Like, that system does it, narrows it down. It means he only has to look at 10% of them rather than all of them. Again, that's just all it is doing. It's just compressing those time-consuming tasks.
Yep. Now, I'm mindful of time. We've got another couple of podcasts after this today, but I wanted to finish off with a couple of rapid-fire questions. We didn't get anywhere near your hobbies, mate. I know you were going to talk. I proposed that you actually do this podcast in Spanish, but
we could have got Peter in.
Yeah.
Oh, can Peter speak?
Peter's
He tries to.
But Peter's wife is Spanish, and they went to Spain, and it was the most annoying thing of all time. Him.
I think he knows how to ask for a beer, and that's about it.
Me too.
But you're an avid hobbyist. You're learning Spanish at the moment.
Yeah.
You play chess. You're obviously a fit unit. I think we might save some of those for round 2. But I'll ask you the same questions that I asked of Vicky when she was in, and they were: are you an avid reader, other than legal documents? Are you reading anything that we should be onto? Any good books?
Yeah, good. No, nothing that you'd probably like.
You don't know. What might I like?
I just read I read Atomic Habits recently. That was really good. You probably already read that.
Yep.
Yeah, I've read Robert Greene.
Yes.
Yeah, Laws of Seduction, just because I like Robert Greene. I think he's a good writer. I read that. I don't really know whether that's people's cup of tea, but that's just 2 recent ones I've read.
They're going on my Christmas list. Ben, you're going to get those in your Christmas hamper this year?
I've got a lot of half books. I started them, I like them, and then I moved to, I don't know why, I just moved to the next one. Halfway through Legacy, that's pretty good. Have you read Legacy?
Oh, yeah. No, I haven't.
Pretty good.
Yeah,
Peter give you that?
That's an easy one. I'm not sure. I think you did.
Did I? I probably re-gifted it from Peter.
Possibly.
Peter gave that
said
to
your
me.
name in the back of it.
Peter writes in all of his books, so you can't re-gift his books because he puts a little personal message in all of them.
The History of Everything's good too. That's a good book. I read that recently.
Which one was that?
The History of Everything. It's just like a summary of kind of Big Bang to now. It's good. It's pretty like summarized.
Who wrote that?
Couldn't tell you.
It's not. Who's the physicist? Is
no,
it?
No, it's not a physicist. I think it's just a historian or something.
You're thinking of Neil
deGrasse
Neil
Tyson.
deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. I like him. Yeah. But I'm an avid reader, but I probably read more like not self-help kind of style books, but non-fiction kind of.
Okay.
That's what I'm interested in reading.
What about podcasts? You listening to anything at the moment that interests you?
Finances.
Yeah.
Finances.
Good answer.
That's
Correct.
the right answer. Good work. Clip that one, Joe.
Yeah, I don't know whether people will judge me for this, but I've recently started listening to Joe Rogan's podcast again, just out of curiosity.
You're all good here.
Good. I thought with Jocko I'd be safe.
Yeah.
You're all good.
Yeah.
Safe space.
It's safe space.
Better
Yeah.
No, I'm an avid Rogan listener.
Yeah, good.
People can come at me for that. I enjoy it. And the last question I had was, it is a financial planning podcast. We do sort of weave our way through issues of a financial nature. But what's the best bit of advice, financial or otherwise, that you've been given in your life that you've actually applied in your own life?
Yeah. Probably one I figured out myself just over time is every time I get paid, I've got an Excel spreadsheet and it's got exactly where my money's going, and I sit down and when my pay comes in, I sit down and I work through each cell and I pay, and at the end, one of the things I pay first is my savings, which I think is also a good tip. Pay yourself first, mortgage, then yourself, and then I know exactly where my money's going. And if I've got a big expense coming in, it'll be in the Excel spreadsheet, and I'll know about it because I do it a month in advance. And that's worked really well for me. You have to know where your money's going.
Ben's in tears over here.
Beautiful.
This is if you could pick a better ideal client, he's right here, isn't he?
Polished up, ready to go.
He's organised. He knows what he.
They could just teach that in school. I reckon that would be great.
But why aren't they? I mean,
Yeah.
cash flow management 101. Where your money's going, what comes in, what goes out, the difference between the two. You in surplus or deficit?
Yeah.
Then you can make decisions.
It takes you 15 minutes to do an Excel spreadsheet with some sums.
We've got one.
and
People can have it. Email us.
Yeah.
We'll send you the
There you go.
spreadsheet for nothing.
Yeah.
You can have it.
And that makes a world of difference. Outside of that, God, you can make it more complicated, but at least then you kind of know where your money's going. Because if you just spend it, God, that sounds like stressful.
Yeah, a lot of people track it retrospectively as well,
Yeah.
and then which it gives you good data, but it doesn't necessarily change what you're doing unless you actually act on it as well.
Yep.
Great advice, Tristan. Now, if people are looking to update their existing wills, they don't have a will, they've got sort of a curly family situation they need to talk to someone about, preferably you. How do they get in touch with you? Where are you on the interwebs? Either LinkedIn, Instagram, your website. How can they find you?
Yeah, all of the above. I'm on LinkedIn, but if you want to get in touch with me, shoot me an email. My details are on Harwood Andrews' website. you're welcome to catch up for a coffee or just have a phone call. See if I can help you. But yeah, and look, if you kind of we've got a great team of mixed seniority. We've got people more junior than me and people far more senior than me. So, if you'd prefer anyone else in the team, we've got accredited specialists. We've got a great team. So it doesn't have to be me, but it can be if you want. I'd be flattered.
Cool. Well, mate, it's been a pleasure to have you on. It's always good to have family on the podcast, isn't it, Ben?
I feel a bit out of place here.
No, you're in there, mate. You're in the.
You can hyphenate your surname.
Yeah, I'll bring it in. We'll have to.
Burke Kemp or Kemp Burke? What would you be?
Not Kemp Burke.
Yeah, I don't think either works well, does it?
And we'll work on that.
Yeah.
Listen, I look forward to having you back on for another few episodes in the future. Thanks very much. And again, I said it in the podcast with Vicky, but we really appreciate the relationship that we've had with Harwood Andrews over now a couple of decades, and look forward to it continuing for another few decades into the future. So thanks, Tristan.
Likewise. Thanks, Jay.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
Cheers.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britain FP, or Google Burke Britain Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PP Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britain Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.